Over the past few months, I've been having conversations with letting agents, property managers, and portfolio landlords across the country. What strikes me is that they are all saying exactly the same thing. The tenants have disappeared. They have not simply moved to different neighbourhoods or relocated to cheaper areas within the country, they have left entirely. They have packed up their lives and departed from the United Kingdom, and the truly alarming part is that nobody is coming to replace them. The statistics paint a sobering picture of what is actually happening. Approximately 800,000 people left the United Kingdom last year alone. Current projections suggest another 600,000 will follow them out the door this year. These are not tourists returning to their home countries after a holiday. These are workers. These are people who held jobs, who contributed to the economy, who paid rent month after month. They were embedded in the fabric of British life, and now they are simply gone, with no indication that they intend to return. What most people fail to understand is that this crisis extends far beyond simple population numbers. The real story lies in examining exactly who is leaving and what vacuum they are creating in their wake. Every week brings fresh announcements from technology companies about workforce reductions. What these press releases carefully avoid mentioning is the composition of those being let go. The majority of workers being laid off are foreign nationals who came to this country on skilled worker visas. When their employment ends, their visa gets cancelled. They are given 60 days to leave the country. There is no appeal, no extension, no alternative path to staying. I can speak to this directly from my own experience. My building housed 12 software engineers, all of them European or Asian, all of them here on work visas that were tied to their employers. Since January, 8 of them have received redundancy notices. They did not move across town or find new positions. They returned to Poland, Romania, India, and elsewhere. Their flats remain empty to this day. The letting agents cannot fill them because the pool of qualified tenants has simply evaporated. The National Health Service provides another window into this exodus. Foreign staff are leaving in unprecedented numbers. Nurses are returning to the Philippines. Doctors are relocating to Australia, where working conditions and compensation are dramatically better. These medical professionals came to Britain seeking opportunity and career advancement. What they discovered instead was a system that expected them to work punishing hours for inadequate compensation while simultaneously paying £2,000 monthly for accommodation that often featured damp walls and mould problems. The calculation became simple. Why endure these conditions when better options exist elsewhere? The departure is not limited to highly skilled professionals either. Consider all those delivery riders, the drivers working for ride-sharing platforms, the warehouse workers processing packages through the night. These are the people performing the essential labour that keeps cities functioning on a daily basis. They too are leaving. Some are returning to their countries of origin. Others are relocating to Germany or the Netherlands or any nation that offers them better treatment and more sustainable living conditions than what they found here. Let me share a specific example that illustrates this broader trend. My local coffee shop recently closed its doors permanently. The owner was a Turkish gentleman who had built his business here over 15 years. He was a fixture in the community, someone everyone knew and respected. Now he is returning to Istanbul because the economics of remaining in Britain no longer make any sense. The rent on his shop premises increased by 60%. The rent on his flat increased by 40%. Meanwhile, his revenue declined because his regular customers, the people who stopped in every morning, have themselves departed. When people leave a country, they take their spending power with them. Every single person who departs represents one less tenant, one less customer, one less taxpayer contributing to the system. The cumulative effect is that the entire economy begins to deflate. I am acquainted with a landlord who accumulated 23 rental properties over the years. He referred to it as his buy-to-let empire, and he was quite proud of the portfolio he had constructed. The strategy involved leveraging each property to finance the acquisition of the next one. Every single unit was mortgaged to the maximum extent possible. On paper, it appeared to be a clever wealth-building approach. The reality today tells a different story. 11 of his 23 properties are sitting empty. He has slashed his advertised rents to half of what he was asking 12 months ago. Even at these reduced prices, he cannot attract tenants. The problem is that while rental income has collapsed, his mortgage obligations have not followed suit. Interest rates have pushed his payments to double what they were previously. He is hemorrhaging £18,000 every single month in losses. By his calculation, he has perhaps 2 months remaining before the banks initiate foreclosure proceedings on his entire portfolio. 23 properties will hit the market simultaneously, and his situation is far from unique. The online forums where landlords congregate have become fascinating to observe. There is a collective crisis unfolding in real time. You see posts from people genuinely confused about why nobody will rent their studio flat for £2,000 monthly. The answer should be obvious. Anyone earning sufficient income to afford £2,000 in rent has no interest in cramming themselves into a studio apartment. Yet the landlords keep reducing their asking prices and finding it makes no difference whatsoever. You cannot rent properties to people who do not exist. The tenants who remain in the country either lack the financial resources to pay any meaningful rent, or they possess enough awareness to recognise that the market is crashing around them and that waiting will yield far better terms. For years, universities represented the most reliable income stream for landlords. Students provided guaranteed rent for 9 months annually. Their parents served as guarantors, eliminating risk. The arrangement was essentially a license to print money with minimal hassle. That era has definitively ended. International student enrolment has declined by 40%. The implications of that number are staggering. Brexit eliminated the flow of European Union students who previously arrived without visa complications. The pandemic disrupted the pipeline of Chinese students whose families had viewed British education as a valuable investment. Recent visa policy changes have created barriers for students from everywhere else. Universities are now in open panic mode. Academic courses are being cancelled. Staff members are receiving redundancy notices. Entire departments are shutting down operations completely. The University of East London recently announced the closure of 2 complete campuses. Each closed campus represents thousands of rental properties that have suddenly lost their primary tenant base. Domestic students are not filling the gap either. They are increasingly choosing to remain in their family homes and pursue their studies online. The logic is straightforward. Why pay £12,000 annually in rent when you can study from your childhood bedroom at no additional cost? The entire economic model that landlords built their investments around has fractured beyond repair. I walked through the student district of Coventry recently and found myself in what resembled a ghost town. Virtually every property displayed a for rent sign in its window. Some of those signs have been posted for over a year without generating a single successful tenancy. The landlords who own these houses paid £300,000 to £400,000 for them, confident that student demand would persist indefinitely. Now they cannot rent them at any price. There is a portfolio landlord in Manchester who owns 60 student houses. He is currently attempting to sell the entire portfolio at 50% of his original acquisition cost. He has not received a single offer. Not one potential buyer has expressed interest because everyone in the market understands that student rentals as an asset class have ceased to function. Cast your mind back to when short-term holiday rentals seemed like the path to effortless wealth. The premise was simple: purchase a flat, list it on Airbnb, rent it to tourists, and watch the money accumulate. Everyone with access to a mortgage suddenly believed they had discovered the hospitality industry's secrets. London alone accumulated 40,000 Airbnb listings at the peak. Note my use of past tense, because tourism has not recovered to anything approaching previous levels. Business travel remains largely dead as companies discovered remote meetings work adequately for most purposes. The visitors simply are not arriving in sufficient numbers. The landlords who pursued this strategy are now in desperate circumstances. Many are attempting to convert their properties back to long-term rentals, but the financial mathematics defeat them. A short-term rental in a desirable area might have commanded £200 per night. That same property as a long-term rental might achieve £2,000 monthly. Meanwhile, the mortgage payment on the property is £3,000 monthly. There is no configuration of these numbers that produces positive cash flow. A neighbour of mine invested heavily in the Airbnb model. He spent £20,000 renovating and furnishing his flat to an impressive standard. He commissioned professional photography. He did everything the experts recommended. 6 months later, he had secured exactly 3 bookings. He is now £40,000 in debt, and the flat has sat empty since August. The darkly amusing aspect is that these landlords genuinely believed they had outsmarted everyone else in the market. They viewed traditional landlords as fools and hotels as obsolete relics. They represented the future. Now they are pleading with conventional tenants to move in at whatever price they will accept. During the pandemic, conventional wisdom held that cities were finished. Remote work would persist forever. Everyone would relocate to the countryside and enjoy better quality of life. London in particular was declared dead as an urban centre. The predictions proved somewhat premature. Employers retained their memories of that period, and many have now mandated 5-day office attendance with no exceptions permitted. The workers who relocated to remote villages and small towns are now attempting to return to cities, only to discover they cannot afford the rents. City pricing has not fallen sufficiently to accommodate them. They find themselves trapped, facing daily commutes of 4 hours or beginning entirely new job searches. The landlords in these commuter towns and rural areas are similarly affected. They believed fortune had smiled upon them when city professionals arrived during the pandemic, driving rents upward. Now those same city workers are departing, leaving properties empty. The local residents who remained never left, but also cannot afford the inflated rents that were established during the boom period. There is a town in Kent where rents increased by 70% during the pandemic as Londoners moved in. Those Londoners have largely departed now, while local workers earning £25,000 annually cannot possibly pay London-level prices for Kent housing. Half the rental properties in that town are empty. Allow me to present the actual figures because they are genuinely remarkable. London currently has 97,000 empty rental properties. That is not a typographical error. Nearly 100,000 rental units are sitting vacant in a city that supposedly suffers from a housing crisis. Manchester has 34,000 empty rentals. Birmingham has 28,000. Leeds has 19,000. Across the entire nation, over 400,000 rental properties are sitting empty with no tenants in residence. In a country where we are constantly told there are insufficient houses to meet demand, the houses exist. What does not exist is a population that can afford to rent them at the prices being asked. The average time required to rent a property has changed dramatically. In 2019, a property would typically find a tenant within 11 days of being listed. The current average exceeds 53 days. In some areas, properties simply never rent. They remain listed until the landlord eventually surrenders and removes them from the market. 40% of landlords have reduced their asking rents within the last 6 months, and these are not modest adjustments. They are cutting hundreds of pounds from the monthly price. Still, they cannot secure tenants. The buy-to-let investment model has died. Not declined, not corrected, but died completely. The fundamental arithmetic no longer functions. The average buy-to-let mortgage carries an interest rate of 7.2%. The average rental yield stands at 4.5%. You are losing money from the first day of ownership. The situation compounds when you factor in taxation changes, maintenance costs that have exploded in recent years, insurance premiums that have tripled, mandatory energy performance certificates, and selective licensing fees that vary by local authority. The expenses never cease accumulating. I know landlords who are effectively paying tenants to occupy their properties. They are subsidising the tenancy because an empty property actually costs more than one with someone living in it. At minimum, a tenant means someone else is responsible for the council tax. The banks have recognised what is happening. Buy-to-let mortgage approvals have fallen by 80%. The lending institutions will not extend credit because they understand these properties no longer function as investments. Among existing buy-to-let mortgages, 20% are currently in arrears. 1 in every 5 landlords is failing to meet their payment obligations. The banks are sitting on this developing crisis, hoping circumstances will improve before widespread defaults occur. They will not improve. London captures most of the attention, but the regional picture reveals complete market collapse. Aberdeen once commanded premium rents from oil industry workers. Those days are finished. 60% of rental properties there are empty. Landlords are offering 6 months of free rent as an inducement. Still, no one is interested. Newcastle built its rental market on students, nightlife, and technology employment. All three pillars have crumbled, student numbers have declined precipitously, the entertainment economy has contracted, the technology jobs that were supposed to arrive never materialised, rents have fallen 40% and continue declining. In Middlesbrough, the average monthly rent has dropped to £300. £300 for an entire house. Still, there are insufficient tenants because anyone holding employment that allows them to live anywhere does not choose Middlesbrough. Meanwhile, those without employment cannot satisfy the referencing requirements. Even traditionally prosperous locations are experiencing difficulties. Bath, Oxford and Cambridge are all recording empty rental properties and falling rents because the international students and workers whose presence inflated prices have departed. The government possesses full awareness of what is occurring. They have access to all the relevant data. They can see the empty properties, the population departures, the landlord defaults. They know everything, yet they are saying nothing publicly. The reason for their silence is straightforward. Acknowledging that the rental market is collapsing would require acknowledging that the entire property market is collapsing. They cannot permit that admission, so they maintain the pretense that conditions are normal. They announce programs to build more homes and schemes to assist first-time buyers. All of it is fundamentally irrelevant. You cannot address a demand crisis by increasing supply. Yet they persist with the charade because the alternative is admitting they have damaged the economy beyond easy repair. Meanwhile, government officials are quietly developing contingency plans for mass landlord defaults, bank bailouts, and mortgage payment holidays. These discussions are occurring behind closed doors. They understand precisely what is approaching. The United Kingdom rental market is dying. I want to be clear about my choice of words here. It is not struggling through a difficult period. It is not experiencing a healthy correction. It is dying. The tenants are leaving the country in substantial numbers. The students are not arriving to replace them. The tourists are not returning in anything like previous volumes. Workers are either going remote or relocating abroad. The entire model of buy-to-let, build-to-rent, rent-to-survive is disintegrating. Landlords who congratulated themselves on their investment acumen are discovering they were simply over-leveraged buyers who purchased at the peak of the market. They stand to lose everything they invested. When that happens, when hundreds of thousands of properties flood onto the market simultaneously, the entire United Kingdom property market will collapse. This is not speculation about some distant future possibility. It is happening right now. Every empty flat, every reduced rent, every desperate landlord represents another crack forming in the dam. When that dam breaks, and it will break, the flood will sweep away everything in its path. If you are currently renting, avoid committing to long lease terms. Rents are going to fall substantially further. If you are a landlord, consider exiting the market now while your property still retains some value. If you are contemplating becoming a landlord, abandon that plan entirely. The age of the British landlord has ended. They simply have not recognised it yet.